your idea of competitive gaming resembles any of this, then I think that idea is dying, and it all starts at the top. It was only just a few years ago when esports was supposed to be the next big thing. Esports would show up in the news and they would always make sure to highlight how large their prize pools were because they wanted to drive home that, hey, this little hobby that your kids are into, this could make them some serious money. And professional gamers were showing up at talk shows, the same talk shows where just a few episodes prior, a lot of famous celebrities were sitting in that exact same chair. The biggest athletes were investing in esports, most notably Rick Fox and Shaquille O'Neal, creating their own esports teams. At this point, everyone was on that esports hype train, and esports was projected to grow exponentially. Yet fast forward to today, and it couldn't feel any further from the truth. A lot of the biggest esports, most notably League of Legends, their viewership has dropped significantly, at least in the West. And yet, while esports is still cruising on today, it is not the same phenomenon that it once was. And why is that? Well, to be honest, there isn't a real concrete answer. There's only so many esports that blew up and unblew up. For me personally, I would like to say that I think that the first reason is that a lot of these games try to take too much control over their esport. The three biggest esports that I followed were League of Legends, Overwatch, and Counter-Strike. Two of these games have seen a downward trend in their popularity since their heydays. And both of these games, I think, are examples of what happens when the game company takes too much control and implements franchising. To significantly dumb down what this mistake of a system is, franchising is simply a system where teams are guaranteed a spot in the league rather than having to earn it. Now, the point of franchising is to add what is essentially a safety net for teams in case they had a bad year, which would in turn attract more investors. Now, the reality is that franchising is dog shit for a multitude of reasons. And one of them is that it can make the league a lot less competitive. What ends up happening is that you have a few orgs that are at the bottom of the barrel of a league that are doing the bare minimum to scratch by and not adding any commercial value to the league and just making it shittier to watch in general. But another reason why it is bad is because when that happens, the game company will usually pull the plug on other third-party tournament organizers, which means that there is usually only one source to watch the game. In League's case, if you wanted to watch professional North American League of Legends, you would have to watch the NALCS, or I guess now the LTA. In Overwatch's case, back in the day, you could only watch the Overwatch League. Now, the game company having complete control over the esport wouldn't be much of a problem if the product was actually good. But we can't have that because for some reason, they always make some terrible decisions that just make watching this esport so garbage. For a league, they fucked up by having two streams going on at the same day, moving to a best of one format, and merging the CBLOL, the NALCS, and the LLA into one giant LTA league that pleased absolutely no one. Man, that took me a lot of tries to say. In Overwatch's case, they fucked up by never updating the game for an entire year despite everyone watching it and calling it dog shit. Exclusive YouTube streaming partnership despite Twitch being the premier platform at the time. City-based teams, stripping away that familiar team branding that a lot of esports teams have built over the years. And most importantly, you can't forget my boy DJ Khaled performing at the Overwatch League, can you? Seriously, when you take full ownership of something and they just don't know what to do with it, it is not a surprise that it is absolutely failing. And it pisses me off too because I used to love the Overwatch League.
Yeah, so here's my hat. Here's some proof. Look. Overwatch League. I went to a live event, and now I can't do that anymore. And I'm kind of sad.
Anyways, while League and Overwatch has seen a decline, on the other hand, Counter-Strike continues to succeed, partially due to the gambling, but also because it has a much more decentralized structure, being against franchising, which has a much more fun esports viewing experience. And look, I get it, I've been talking about how all of these game companies are making all these dog shit terrible decisions that really ruin the esport. But another reason why esports is failing is that the cold, harsh reality is that there actually isn't much money to be made here. The target demographic of esports doesn't really spend much money. Now, the reason for that is because, well, one, the target demographic just doesn't really make a lot of money, and two, the target demographic, we are so conditioned to getting a lot of our content for free that things like paying like $5 a month for a program just does not seem worth it at all to us. So if the game companies want to monetize their esport, well, you can't make it so that you have to pay to watch because one, a lot of us don't have the money to watch it, and we wouldn't want to watch it if we had to pay for it, and two, by making it free and then putting ads on it, well, a lot of advertisers don't want to advertise on esports because, well, a lot of us wouldn't be buying the esports products anyways. So yeah, a lot of companies don't really want to put the time and effort into esports because it's not going to really make them much money. But then there's also the side of the players. Let me put it this way, if you were a really talented soccer player, it would be a no-brainer to try to make it to the top of the soccer world. However, if you were a really good game player like League or Overwatch or something like that, well, you would honestly probably make more money focusing on content creation rather than trying to compete in official tournaments. And on top of that, esports careers don't last very long. And honestly, it doesn't make enough money to justify the risk for pursuing this. Well, at least for most players, that is. And you know, that sucks, but that's just the reality that we live in. But look, all of this esports talk really only affects a small part of the player base that cares about esports and actively watches it. So let's talk about the games themselves. So remember that big esports boom that I talked about earlier? Well, because of that, there was a huge fixation on creating the next big esport. Because all of these companies wanted to make their game the next big esport, they tailored their games around the highest levels of play. Now, on paper, balancing the game around the optimal way of playing might not sound like a terrible idea of balancing, but here's the thing, 99% of players aren't playing at this high of a level, so by balancing the game and designing the game around that small 1%, you slowly push away that casual giant majority of your player base. And yeah, this is how you fast track your game to becoming derelict in the next 3 years. And obviously, this isn't a great idea, and these game companies know this. So they went full 180 and decided to focus on making the game as fun as possible instead of making the game as competitive as possible. Now look, this is an excellent decision, don't get me wrong. But sometimes I think that they might have taken it just a tad bit too far. Marvel Rivals added these things called Chrono Shield cards, which protect you from D-ranking when you lose a game. Valorant lets you 5-stack with players of any rank, creating very bad lobby balance. Like, bro, just look at this. And this is just from a game that I played like a few days ago. And let's not mention how most of these games don't really care about smurfing and won't do anything about it because, hey, banning/limiting smurfs would mean that these smurfs would spend less money on their alt accounts. These decisions that infringe on the competitive integrity of these games, whether it be to make the game more fun, but let's be real, it's for the money, makes the competitive experience of these games feel like complete dog shit. And this is only talking about the decisions that the companies are actively making to make the competitive experience shit. This doesn't include the fact that there is a core aspect of these games that are just unavoidable that make them complete competitive dog shit. And that is that in a 5v5 team game, communication and coordination is necessary. But when you are playing solo queue, you throw all that shit out the window. And trust me guys, if hell was real, it would be in the form of League of Legends solo queue. And the reality is that while devs can try to alleviate the issues that come with solo queue will always be problematic. And yet there is still one thing that has undeniably led competitive gaming to dying, and that is the shift in gaming culture in the recent years. And yes, I know I said undeniably, but to be honest, this is mostly conjecture, but I still feel like it is a point worth mentioning. So yeah, the shift in gaming culture. Just a few years prior, being good at games felt like something that you could flex to your classmates and friends. But if someone flexes their gaming skills now, especially online, well, the sentiment is a lot different. You're probably gonna be met with a lot of comments calling you out for being unemployed and that you are a loser in real life with too much time on their hands. Now, don't get me wrong, the sentiment of you are better than me, so you are a no life sweat has always been a sentiment that gamers have always shared and said when they get pissed off and are tilted. But because the internet has become a lot bigger and a lot of people are using social media even more now, it feels like it's gotten even worse, and that kind of sucks. Because I don't know if this is just me, but taking the time to being good at anything deserves some level of praise. But a lot of people nowadays just brush it off as a kid with too much time on their hands or an adult with no life. And honestly, it's kind of sad. So in conclusion, esports and competitive gaming is not what it used to be. Just play Roblox instead.